Welcome to The Last Call. It's a conversation between two boozy hacks. My name is John Sweeney and I'm in London. And joining me in New York is my old pal, Mike Weiss. How are you?
Good. You're getting very Santa Claus in your beard situation there. I like it. It's good. Did you ever see the photo of Francis Ween, the private eye editor? Every Christmas he posts, where he had this fuck all shaggy ass white beard and he's got a Santa hat on. You're looking a bit weenish at the moment.
It comes off. It's better in Russian. Я плохой Дед Мороз. I'm bad Santa Claus. Or I'm bad Father Frost. Anyway, I'm getting bored with it because I don't want to go into too much detail, but I had some soup today, and it's a mess. So the problem is all the barbershops have been closed during the mini lockdown, and London's so it's just shop. The pubs are open, but you have to go for a substantial
Most important
meal.
thing.
Yeah, and I booked to go for a substantial meal with some mates from LBC, which is it's my new BBC. The same kind of nonsense you have to deal with. Some bureaucrats, some really funny.
I don't know, John. I would say LBC's putting up with quite a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of your behavior, yeah.
They're it's nice, and I feel well. Anyway, I'm only freelance, but I'm putting. By the way, let's do this for fun. What are you drinking?
I am back to my Japanese gin. I'd gone off it for a spell. Done Bombay Sapphire, done Aviation Gin. The actor Ryan Reynolds brand, which I quite liked. But I keep coming back to this. This is the Suntory, the famous Japanese whiskey distillery. They got into the gin game, and it's good, and it's relatively cheap. So
I'm actually.
I quite like the design of the bottle as well.
I'm drinking anti-malarial prophylactic, as I like to call gin and tonic. This is it's a Sip Smith's kind of lemony gin. I've obviously added my own lemons. And then
it's a quite nice brand that I should buy a bottle of, and I haven't had it in ages. It's called Bar Hill, and it's infused with honey, which sounds a bit ick until you actually taste it. And the nice thing about it is you don't need to cut it with anything. You don't have to put tonic. You don't have to put club soda. You can, because the honey sort of sweetens it, and it's its own sort of flavor. So try that if you can get it.
I tend to when I'm looking for that kind of stuff, I tend just to drink raw alcohol. But in a very, because I'm a
I don't want to mess with your heroin addiction, so let's not get too fancy here.
I've got such an addictive personality. I've never ever in my life done hard drugs because I'm afraid, because I think if I went there, I'd lose it. But this, by the way, this is very generous of me because I'm a massive Ramona, and Botham is a Brexiteer. But anyway, I want to buy Australian wines for a reason. And anyway, this is what I found. Australian wine in my local supermarket, Waitrose, Botham. And so the moment I've knocked off the gin and tonic, which will be about 2 minutes, I'm going to knock this back, and we'll talk through it. Anyway,
so Botham is a Brexiteer brand because the owner is a Brexiteer, but it's Australian.
He's a great cricketer. Cricket is a game that you don't understand, you people.
It's true, I don't understand it, but C.L.R. James, who is a very talented Trotskyist journalist and historian, he was a great lover of cricket and wrote a book which actually made me interested in cricket for about 10 minutes until I realized it's cricket. But it has been written of compellingly.
Oh, no, it's beautiful. Now, let's have a bit of politics just for fun. Whose country is more fucked, the United States or the United Kingdom?
Well, you're getting the vaccine next week, I believe. So I'd say you're less fucked, or in a better state of unfuckedness than we. It's going to take us at least a month till the end of December. I think the order of priority will be relatively the same. People in elder care homes, first responders, or healthcare professionals, then people with underlying conditions, and then it goes down till eventually people such as myself get it. by which point I'll be dead. So it won't matter.
My my daughter is organizing volunteers to give the jabs or process the jabs, and whenever I call her, she says I'm busy. But what she delights in telling me is that actually, I'm 62, slightly overweight, with some people say a liking for the drink, but actually fundamentally I'm healthy. I've got no pre-existing health conditions, and she likes to say, you're not a priority, Dad. I just want to tell you that. And she could easily. I don't quite understand what she does.
Also, I think you've subscribed to the Lukashenko anti-COVID regimen of just drinking yourself silly and basically killing any foreign agent that might enter your bloodstream. So
no, don't compare me with the tyrant ruler of Belarus. Thank you very much, Mike Weiss. No, I feel that I do like a drink, and I think it's good for gin and tonic. It's good for preventing malaria. It's a problem in London these days with global warming. That's not true. It's cold outside. But anyway, I don't. So basically, the 80-year-olds, the people who work in hospitals, quite rightly get it first. Then the 70-year-olds. Then everybody up to 65. And so my daughter's saying, you're not going to get it till mid-February. There's nothing I can do, she says. La, 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 la. And anyway, I don't quite know what she does, but it's important. And the kind of subtle suggestion is that what I do for a living isn't important. I don't really do it for a living anyway.
Yeah, but you're quite safe. You don't go anywhere. You don't go outside. Well, if you go outside, you do this distancing. You won't go to the barber shop to trim your beard.
I'm going okay. And the other thing is, the moment the barber shop's open, I'm gonna get it within a few days. The next time we do this, I'll look like a baby. Okay, maybe not, but no, I like having a beard because you don't have it's kind of warm in winter, but this is too long and I want to get rid of it. Anyway, has Trump gone yet?
No, he's still there. But he's kind of gone in spirit, I think. He won't concede. There's reporting that suggests he won't attend the inauguration, and he'll actually use January 21, I believe is the date, to announce he's going to run again in 2024. So, I mean, it's a massive fuck you to Joe Biden and to the country, because we've never seen anything like this. But in a way, it's interesting because I think you could almost, well, I shouldn't say this, because every time I think we've hit a nadir in sort of the way our politics works and the way that this country is run, I'm then surprised to see that no, actually, it was a false bottom and it keeps going lower and lower. So, Giuliani giving a press conference in front of the gardener's shop next to the butt plug merchant and the mortician. I thought, okay, I think we've seen the real end of this whole affair. And then Giuliani gives a press conference where he has what looks like liquid shit running down either cheek, but turns out to have been some forbidding combination of sweat and like over-the-counter cheap-ass hair dye, like just for men, as you might buy in Albania or something. And so now, even Trump has said, you're making me look like a fool, which, I mean, doesn't need much help to do that. But even if Trump is acknowledging that his legal team, including this batshit, I forget her name. I mean, it's come and gone. The one who got up on telly and said,
Powers?
Yeah, that's it. Who said Hugo Chavez, who's been dead for 7 years, was responsible for electoral fraud. I mean, it's almost like this. It's like Junior Soprano in the nursing home in the last episode of that series, where Tony comes to him and he's like recounting RFK getting shot at the Ambassador Hotel, and Tony kind of reminds him, you were a mafioso, and at one point the head of our family. And Junior is sort of like, his mind is gone, it's mush, he's just kind of grabbing whatever is in his depleted consciousness. That's sort of where they are. It's like, well, what can we say today? Oh yeah, the commies, remember the commies? The commies done it, right? No, it's the CIA, they're responsible. And then Trump has suggested is the FBI, which is his whole, his mainstay, the deep state. And nobody really seems to give a shit now. We've already moved on to Biden's picks for various cabinet or administration posts being attacked by Republicans. This woman, Neera Tanden, who's, very kind of dyed-in-the-wool Democratic establishment type, very pro-Hillary, ran Center for American Progress. I don't have an opinion one way or the other about her, but I know that the far left hate her as much, if not more, than the GOP. And the GOP, though, is saying, well, we don't like her tweets. We find them unpleasant and nasty. And, to his credit, Joe Biden gave an interview to Tom Friedman, the New York Times, saying, really, the Republican Party are now suddenly concerned with the indecorousness of Twitter and the people who use it? He's like, fuck off. Then, that's 90% of the Republicans right there are gone. So, Joe he's doing the smart thing. He's just kind of plowing ahead and paying no heed to the online lynch mobs. But that to me suggests or indicates that, the era of Trump is coming to an end. And, all the things that he's saying and all the kind of the sand he's throwing into the ether, it doesn't matter anymore. Even I think his fanatical following. I mean, the Civil War never broke out. Touch wood, it's not going to. There haven't been acts of violence. There have been threats of violence. You've had, electoral workers, election workers, whatever they're called, having security details, including Republicans who are pro-Trump, who simply refuse to break the law to throw out votes.
I think, by the way, I want to say, put my hand up and salute the Republican election official in Georgia, and also the guy in Pennsylvania, both of whom are Republicans, both of whom wanted Trump to win, who have been proper. And they have said, sorry, the rule of, this is a fair vote. Our side has lost, and we're going to honor that. And he's inviting the guy in Georgia was really quite angry about it on the steps of whatever the state capital was inside the government building in Georgia, saying, come on, fair play is fair play. Sorry, that's an English way of putting it, but I thought it was beautiful. It was what I thought what would happen, that partly schooled and tutored by you, but I thought that the American belief in the rule of law would trump Trump. And I thought that Joe was going to win the Rust Belt states. And lo and behold, that's what's happened. By the way,
that's the optimistic version. The cynical version is all of these lickspittles who were party to a personality cult for 4 years have realized that their own careers, their own self-interest trumps Trump, because Trump has lost. I mean, they understand reality when reality threatens to affect their bank account, right? I mean, this has always been the thing with these authoritarian regimes, including Mr. Putin's, which could be characterized as postmodern to an extent. They love to play with the idea of truth. There's almost kind of this critical theory notion of what is fact versus fiction. Everyone lies. We're lying to you, and we are, but it doesn't matter because, this is sort of the way the game is played. However, the one thing they all come back to, the cold, brute, empirical reality of, is money, right? So if you're an election worker, or if you're some kind of political figure, bureaucrat, and your job will be lost by defending this zombie corpse of a outgoing lame duck president, all of a sudden the MAGA hat comes off and you have your kind of moment from Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, and you make a great stand for democracy and the rule of law and all that, and that's fine. That's fine, even if it's the baser instincts of human nature at play here, keeping the republic together. I'm okay with that. I didn't have any higher expectation than exactly that. And I want to see the GOP, I want to see them as a metaphorical circular firing squad. I want to see them cannibalize each other, attack each other. Already you've seen Roger Stone attacking William Barr, the man who basically got Roger Stone off the hook, or at least reduced the sentence or the indictment of him. I think it was the sentence, actually. And Roger Stone gets up and says, William Barr, you had one duty, one job, push back, destroy the deep state. And now by certifying that this was a free and fair election, there were no instances of fraud, you have become an enemy. I mean, what did you think a guy like Roger Stone, a man with a Richard Nixon fucking tattoo on his back, was going to do? You know, he's basically treating William Barr like he treats the towel boy at his sex club in Miami. You know, services rendered. Thank you very much. Now go fuck off. And here's a $5 bill on your way out. You know, these are these people, and this is the thing. They have always been like this, but they had somehow hypnotized a big swath of the American electorate into thinking that they were martyrs or they were victims of some national security apparatus conspiracy, or they were brave truth tellers speaking for the people against the so-called elites. And now, again, my line is just look at these fucking people. And even their erstwhile fans and advocates, I think, are realizing they're insane.
But you've got to look at it. So 80% of people, according to an opinion poll in the States, believe that Joe Biden has won fair and square, which means 20% don't. That's a fifth of the United States population. That's 60 million people.
Sure, but you know, there was a poll taken years on after 9/11, which found something like a third of the country didn't think Al-Qaeda flew planes into the buildings. It was an inside job. It was some kind of American concocted conspiracy. So you're always going to get that sort of sizable plurality of nut jobs out there, and that's fine. 80% though, that's a pretty decent number for a country that has lost its collective mind over the last 4 years and is still in this grip of paranoia or coming out of this. It's like being deprogrammed from a cult. You know what deprogramming is like. You covered Scientology, right? So I'll take 80% and I'll leave that 20% and, you know, let them repair to Reddit and stay in their mother's basements and grouse and grumble that, you know, Hillary Clinton is really a male reptile alien from Mars or whatever the fuck. I mean, it doesn't matter to me as long as we kind of move on. But the real question though is and this is what worries me, because I am very pessimistic. Was Trump an aberration in the history of this country, or was he a kind of caricatured, cartoonish version of the tendencies that we've already been experiencing and that we will continue to experience unto inexorable decline and fall? So in other words, can this deterioration of America be halted, or is Joe Biden simply, you know, a Band-Aid on a patient that is hemorrhaging? I don't know, and I have good days and bad days on that.
This is a good moment to drink to Botham's 80 series Cabernet Sauvignon from Coonawarra, because I am an optimist, and I'm an optimist because one of my great heroes in life, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is an optimist, and he's got a lot more problems than I've got. Cheers. So let's see if I start vomiting over the keyboard, you'll know it's as bad. Yum.
Why don't you tell our 3 listeners that you're drinking this Australian wine in solidarity?
Yes. So the reason I'm drinking, normally I drink Italian red, and but this is really lovely. It's blah blah blah. It's kind of fruity with a big fat nose, but it's fucking lovely. Anyway, the reason I'm doing this is
a soupçon of toilet water, as they say.
It's not. No. It's nice. Don't do that.
There goes one of our advertisers, prospective advertisers.
By the way, we always forget to do this.
Oh yeah. We're trying to make some money now, right?
Well, no. The thing is that I love doing these chats because 1, they're therapeutic. Number 2, I kind of understand. I come away from them understanding what's happening in the United States better than I did before, because you live there and you know it and you feel it and you understand stuff and you explain it beautifully. But also, I like a drink while kind of working is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm working and I'm drinking, which is always nice. And anyway, but it doesn't pay the rent. So, but if anybody out there, like Mr. Botham, who I don't agree about Brexiteer, but I like his wine, it's lovely, or Sip Smiths, or anybody wants to sponsor this, that'd be great. That'd be funny. The other thing is, I'd say no to, for example, the Chinese government. If the Chinese Communist Party wants to sponsor this podcast, the reaction would be fuck you. And also we do Patreon. If you look at the doodah, On the
the
Twitter.
doodah being our Twitter account.
Yeah,
I can tell you it's simply patreon.com/2boozyhacks.
Yes, and
You
so the two
can
boozy hacks,
subscribe.
essentially, if you've got $5 or $10, you can, if you've got money, more, but if you've got less, less. But a little bit of money to help us do this is nice. We'd probably do it anyway, but never mind. That's what we're saying. So the reason I'm drinking Australian wine against Italian wine, which is what I normally do and will do, is that the Chinese Communist Party have reacted ferociously to Australia's perfectly proper call for there to be an open and honest and proper international investigation into the origins of COVID. The Chinese have launched a trade boycott against Australia. And I'm also conscious, because I've reported on it for BBC Newsnight, there's a film out there somewhere, about the plight of the Uyghurs, which I did, I think, in whenever it was, 2018, talking to two Uyghurs, who, these are the people, the Muslim Turkic people, many of them look like Afghans or Iraqis, who live in the far northwest of China, Xinjiang, the new territories, that's what it means in Chinese, who are Muslim, and they have been brutally treated, and a monstrous crime is happening in Xinjiang. I'm also very conscious that a monstrous crime has been happening for much longer in Tibet. And I am a passionate believer in free Tibet, or at least the freeing up of Tibet. So I don't like Australia. I've never been there. It's flat. It's full of horrible creatures, awful spiders that kill you, sharks that bite you and kill you, crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles that kill you. The art was really good about 20,000 years ago. And the newcomers, frankly, they're all a bit common, a bit riffraffy. But the moment the Chinese Communist Party says to Australia, you shut up, or we're not going to buy your wine, which is what they're doing, is the moment that I start drinking Australian wine, because I don't like where China's going, and a bit of the Chinese Communist Party is going. And so a reason for optimism is that, let me have a quick swig of this, is that I think there are many people like me who have happily accepted lovely Chinese goods because they're so cheap. And the consequence has been the undermining of manufacturing in Europe and the United States across the world. Now, until China gets it, their kind of, under President Xi, their regime is becoming less authoritarian and more totalitarian, certainly in the way it's dealing with proper, decent cultures, the Uyghurs and the Tibetans, the way it's dealing with Hong Kong, the way it's dealing with the international rules-based order. We should start saying, factories in Britain and Europe and the United States open up again, because we've got trouble. We've got problems with the way China does things. Number one, the virus. Now, I'm not a subscriber to the conspiracy theories that this was a kind of made thing. It might have come out of a lab where they were in Wuhan, where they were looking at bat to human viruses. That's a possibility. I understand mistakes. I'm not saying this is deliberate at all. I can completely see that these wet markets they sell all manner of wild animals crazily and revoltingly, is the most likely source. But it's an absolute fact that the Chinese government was not open and honest with its international partners about the numbers. And it was only when the virus really hit Italy that we started understanding just how bad it was. And then afterwards, the Chinese government changed their numbers, and that you can actually see it because they were more open and more honest. That's not good enough in the modern world. It really isn't. So I'm a bit optimistic because Biden gets this, and Biden is going to be tough in a realistic and smart way with China and push back. And I think all of us should, all of us who live in democracies need to be with that program. Secondly, I'm optimistic because it feels like what's happened, the rise of populism from 2015 onwards was a kind of spasm reaction to the bankers' crash of 2008 in exactly the same way that when you had the Wall Street crash in 1929, there's a time delay. In this case, 4 years from the Wall Street crash in 29 to mass financial ruin in Germany and the rise of the Nazis. 4 years. What happened, because we're better at this these days, is that the good people, people like Gordon Brown, Obama, managed to soften the blow of the bankers' crash so that it wasn't as visceral and the timeline was longer. But nevertheless, in Britain, we had Brexit, and in the States, we had Trump, both of which I believe are a consequence of of a large mass of people who were angry with their financial negativity flowing from the bankers' crash, which they blamed, or the argument was put to them.
The other thing I would say,
migrants. This was the fault of wokishness, of lesbians, da 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 da. And
so this is what I keep coming back to, because I'm not a fan of wokishness, and I don't understand the language being used by people only 5 to 10 years younger than myself.
And you're a baby. How old are you?
I'm 40 years old, but I grew up being told that clear, concise language, that Anglo-Saxon English means something, and you don't need to use jargon and these sort of academically fraught or weighted terms to try and express yourself. In fact, trying to do so, in this sense, I'm a strict Orwellian. Trying to do so is a way to muddle one's thinking, whether it's your readers or your own, because you're insecure about what you have to say, right? And yet,
By the way, there's a problem with the adjective there, because you're a true disciple of George Orwell, but Orwellian means something else.
No, it can mean both things. It can be used in both senses. It can. There's the politics in the English language sense of being an Orwellian, and then there's the 1984 sense of being Orwellian. But we've sampled a bit of both lately. But no, it's the thing that sort of interests me as somebody who's written one history book and is now writing a second. Cultural excesses born of moments of crisis, anxiety, societal transformation, and fear, in the moment seem exactly that. They seem excessive, they seem ridiculous, they seem the stuff of parody, they seem almost sort of luxuries of a civilization that is perhaps in this death spiral. However, in hindsight, they look to be, I'm not going to say wholly positive, but they look to be kind of an expression of something that becomes positive. So, in the 60s, which you're old enough to have experienced, I was not. All of the things that were seen to be a little bit silly, even whilst living in the 60s or right in the immediate aftermath, rampant drug use, the free love, well, maybe that's not so silly actually, but you know what I mean, the stuff that was parodied by the bourgeois. Out of this, out of the counterculture, out of, the attendant real concrete political action, the civil rights movement, came many things: desegregation, an end of the Vietnam War, categorical reform of the military-industrial complex, and the ending of the draft. The invention, and this might sound euphemistic because these bombs have killed innocent civilians, but they've killed fewer innocent civilians than their predecessor bombs would have done. But the invention of smart weaponry that targets combatants rather than just indiscriminately salts the earth. All of these things are net goods, and yet, as I say, born of movements or kind of moments of agitation that produce a lot of shit and froth. And so what we're seeing right now, I think, in this sort of rampant performative wokeness, which is largely a reaction to Trump, but also largely a reaction to, I think, a sense of helplessness and insecurity in what we are as a country and society, I think ultimately will lead to, more liberal-minded electorate. I mean, right now, for instance, and I'm not equating this with wokeness, but you can see how the two are correlated to some extent. Right now, it's you have people who are opposed to gay marriage, but it is the law of the land in America, and it's not a struggle that many people are willing to fight. It's not a cause many people are willing to fight against anymore. That's a lost cause. That's a losing struggle to say 2 men can't be married or 2 women can't be married, right? So again, 10, 20 years ago, that might have looked a bit silly, but right now that's just the status quo in terms of our mores and our sense of morality. So I don't know, and this is where I might be, what's the word for it? Pess-optimistic, as I've used before. Like right now, I feel things are a bit miserable and ridiculous and self-satirical, but down the line, they may improve. And then it'll take the work of real scholars to say, well, actually, the stuff that you were mocking or found a bit naff 10 years back is what led to all of this. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm not, for instance, I didn't subscribe to the Occupy Wall Street movement. I'm not a fan of Democratic Socialists of America. I'm not a great admirer of the so-called squad, but I can understand how the causes that they're championing, however hyperbolically or without real understanding of policymaking and government and coalition building, I can see how the mainstream or the establishment Democratic Party will dialectically take from the vanguard of the so-called progressive left that which is worth taking and leave the rest, leave the excess, yeah? And that will have transformed American society for the better. Now, my fear is everything kind of becomes a runaway train and you saw, for instance, this week, Barack Obama give an interview in which he joins the ranks of the late John Lewis, great civil rights leader, James Clyburn, the congressman from South Carolina, who was almost single-handedly responsible for delivering Joe Biden the nomination.
He's an African American.
And now Barack Obama. So 3 Black American politicians, leaders, not just in their community, but national leaders, all come out and say slogans such as defund the police are politically toxic, and that's how we lose elections. And
I can't agree more. I feel, well, we're about.
And yet that is not to say, by the way, because what they also said, and this is important, defund the police, the sloganeering of the far left does damage to Black Lives Matter, which is a more mainstream movement rooted in simply ending police brutality and discrimination, rampant racism within our institutions, which is a good thing. Most people will subscribe to that. Yeah. So, okay. This is another example of we've gone a bit too far, but the engine of history, if there is such a thing, or the engine of social change, will take on board what is necessary and just leave the rest.
Yes. No, I'm so, I'm 62. I wake up in the middle of the night, need to go for a pee. And then what I've done too often these last 4 years is switch on Twitter and see that Trump's done something awful with Kim Jong-un or Erdogan or Putin, or being horrible about, talking about Nazis in Charlottesville with the people who are protesting against them as if they're the same. And then I can't sleep for the rest of the night. What's happening now is I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning out of habit. I switch on my phone, I look at Twitter, and there's nothing there. And then I play chess against myself a couple of times, and then I fall asleep. I'm sleeping much, much better because Trump is hold on power is receding.
Yeah.
It feels like that that now, or the 2015, the 5 years of 2015 to 2020 were a time when the Germans and the British and the Americans switched sides, and the Germans were boring but fundamentally decent, and the British and the Americans both fell for the kind of populist nonsense, the kind of stuff that Hitler talked about in 33. I'm not comparing it with full-blown stuff, but a sense of proper patriotism denied, that there are forces, hidden forces out to destroy us, this paranoia and this kind of, we've got to go back to how things were in the 50s, 60s, etc., etc. Now, that loss, for my money, loss of reason, and that dark nostalgia seems to be burning out. And also there's another thing too, is that Boris is doing well right now today because the Brits have the first to give a go to a vaccine. It's actually not the best vaccine because it's got to be carried around the country in -70, which makes it really difficult. And there are the more efficient vaccines that can be put in normal fridges are coming down the track. They'll be better, and they're the big ones. Nevertheless, Boris has had a good day. It doesn't really. There is a fair point to make that Boris has never been as bad as Trump. But nevertheless, Brexit and Trump were both, in my view, dark nostalgia, and it feels as though they're burning out. And we're getting to a place. Now, I want the Republican Party to get back onto its feet in a normal way and start arguing their side of the argument that we've got to think about money, we've got to do the stuff. It's never an argument I support in my life, but nevertheless, it's necessary to hear it said. I want them to get back in their feet, but I'm just looking at Trump. And Trump, isn't he going to toxify the right of American politics for a generation? I mean, because if he's going to run again in 2024, what happens if another decent Republican candidate pops up and then Trump screws them, then goes in power forever, however gaga he may be?
Yeah, no, he will be the wrecking ball for the party. But, then again, John, I mean, all right, the pragmatist in me says, sure, yeah, it'd be nice if, Lindsey Graham kind of woke up in his bed in Kansas and said, Auntie M, and you were there, and pretended like it was all just a weird fairy tale dream. And Marco Rubio, remembered back when he said Donald Trump had a tiny dick, and instead of, talking about how Florida was this MAGA wave waiting to happen, which kind of sort of was. But anyway, I mean, but then the other side of me says, no, fuck them. I mean, look what they've done. Look what they've spent the last 4 years doing. You have to be accountable to your country, first to your constituencies, but also ultimately to your country. And I don't think they were patriots. I don't think they put America and its interests first. They put, the interests of the ideological kind of edifice of their party first. And I don't respect that, and I don't admire that. And look, this is not to say, we've talked before, I'm not a huge Joe Biden booster. I mean, I've resigned myself. I'm fine with him as an alternative to Trump. I would have been fine with almost anybody. And I well know that, within the space of probably weeks, if not months, I'm going to start criticizing Democratic policymaking, especially on foreign policy. And that's fine, because that's just, but that in itself is a return to a kind of normalcy that has been lost over the last 4 years. We just wake up every day demoralized, exhausted, not really wanting to have arguments with people because you can't. Because to have an argument, you need to have some common basis of understanding, some common consensus of what the facts are. And that has been absent, And I will say, and this to my point earlier about excesses, turning these vices into virtues, it's been a bit hyperbolic on the left or the anti-Trump so-called resistance. I mean, every day comparisons of this guy to the Third Reich, or, you know, oh, we were having our crystal knocked moment because he's tweeting out conspiracy theories about Dominion voting machines, a bit much. However, the fact that we're doing it, and the fact that sort of bespeaks having learnt a lesson from not too distant history, and what we can succumb to if we don't kind of build up this, you know, sort of impenetrable citadel for our own national psyche. This is where democratic politics can lead. It can lead to totalitarianism if you allow it. You know, Timothy Snyder, he's over-egged the pudding in arguing this case, but I'm kind of glad that he has, because it's made people terrified. It's made them anxious. It's made them a bit neurotic. And again, it's all well and good to make fun of them when they go on a bit too much, and they become almost caricatures of this. But I'm glad for the fact that they're going in that direction, because it has built up an immune system here, and it has kind of saved American democracy. So this is what I mean, you know. And I like good satire, and I've seen plenty of rather scathing and hilarious critiques of the resistance left. But at the end of the day, I think we're better off for having had it, you know.
I wrestle with that. Well, certainly Jeremy Corbyn.
That's not what I mean, though, by resistance left.
Yeah. No, he's not the. So he was, I think, an acolyte for the Conservative Party. I mean, just the other day, there's a vote on the tiers, which is a kind of regional. Some regions in Britain are going to be more locked down than others because they've got more virus cases, and it's a reasonable way of addressing the problem, that it's worse in some parts of the country than others. And basically the public, in terms of opinion polls, and most MPs are going along with it. There was a rump of the Tory right who said, no, we don't want this, we're not voting for this, and they were supported by 12 or 13 Labour MPs, one of whom was Jeremy Corbyn. Wasn't that? There's your red-brown nexus. The same people.
I mean, you know, how many times we talk about the strange ideological framework of a Seamus Milne? I mean, you know, going to Valdai, moderating a panel with Putin, and then coming back and writing, you know, Russia, which is heading in a fascistic direction, which has institutional homophobia, which is aligned with actual neo-Nazi parties throughout Europe, which has annexed and invaded and annexed sovereign European soil in an Anschluss, citing blood and soil nationalism as its raison d'etre. How can that be an ally of a well, I mean, I guess it can be an ally of a Stalinist, but how can that be the sort of mothership, if you like, of anti-imperialism and sort of left-wing politics? And it's just this bizarre fusion moment where left and right sound very much alike on a lot of things.
I grew, I mean, it was pathetic how many times when I was at the BBC, I pitched, can we have a go? Can I have a go at Seamus Milne? And they were afraid to do so.
Yeah.
Now, it feels that with the election of Joe Biden, common sense has come back. And again, I salute the Republicans who've got this, and I feel that there is still a belief in evidence and the rule of law. It's exciting that our clever scientists have come up, and it's across the world, but they've come up with a vaccine that works. So it feels like kind of decency and rationality and fairness and clear, considered.
Now that's too Pollyannish. I'm sorry, my friend.
Anyway, well, fuck it. I mean,
I don't see that, man. I still see. I mean, you're talking about the Uyghurs.
It's very good.
See genocide denialists all over social media. Yeah, and this is the thing. where have the Corbynistas gone? They are politically irrelevant, but they have repaired to their sort of dank and fetid corners of the internet to scream stab in the back theories and conspiracy theories, and the Jews in the media done it, and you know what? But that's where they belong. That's where they belong. I mean, Corbynism has devolved into, you know, a kind of alt media startup blog with a Patreon account saying, we'll tell you the real truth why we didn't win and why our man isn't prime minister. And you know what? Fine. You know, in their end is their beginning. That's fine. And Trump, if you take the long view of things, and I've been talking to a lot of Europeans about this, because in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been this acknowledgement that, okay, we cannot rely, meaning the Europeans cannot rely on the United States anymore. America is not the security guarantor of the post-war order. The Europeans have to have a kind of sovereign security pact. And that hasn't gone so well. You've got Macron with his sort of de Gaulleist ambitions, locking horns with Angela Merkel, not being successful in challenging a fellow NATO member of Turkey and various spheres of conflict and geopolitical dispute. And so for me, perhaps the lesson of Trump is, okay, Europe, you know, you've seen what America can become. You've seen that we can have our moment of political crisis. Don't you prefer us still as that security guarantor? Don't you still look to us and hope that, you know, we never have this kind of fever dream again? And in that sense, can you now align with us a little more readily and a little more heartily on certain things?
That's
and
my
I don't think that is going to happen, but at least he's gone to check on his dinner again.
Sorry, that's my
Yeah. Is that your spag bowl made with fake plant protein meatballs or whatever the fuck you're putting in these things now?
It's roast lamb.
Oh, okay. That sounds, in theory, in principle, that sounds yummy, but you're going to tell me you make it with like Jello or something. And
no, fuck off. I actually, I'm quite good at the roast lamb, or rather, it's hard to fuck it up. I do feel, that phrase you used there, Mike, was beautiful. The fever dream that you've been through.
yeah.
It does feel like a fever dream, and it does feel like I'm looking at the Declan Lawn, who's been a guest of this show when it was audio only. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to sort this out so you can watch it or listen to it, whichever is your preference. But my friend Declan, who was one of the with Adam Patterson, was one of the wonderful screenwriters of the Salisbury Poisonings. He's a lovely and talented Irishman. But we were talking the other day, partly about Biden, and he said it feels like the arc of kind of justice is working again. That it feels like, you know, you do bad, something bad will happen to you. That kind of simple understanding that that I was brought up to believe in, is back in fashion. And at the moment we're locked in Brexit. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. But Brexit it's depressing. I'm a Remainer, but Brexit was never as depressing or as dark as Trump. And it's so good, I think, for the rest of the world, that our American friends have got their marbles back. And to that, I salute the United States, and at least anyway, one member of it who's sitting in his shebeen in Queens. True?
Deepest Queens, yeah. I love how you think I'm some bellwether of kind of the American psyche. I'm this like malcontent asshole in the outer boroughs of New York. I am the liberal elitist of Donald Trump's sort of bogeyman construction. And I just think, usually I think everything's gone to shit, but occasionally I have moments of optimism or bright spots. See, the other thing is this, if you look at Trump as a kind of a scarecrow come to life of what America can become, and then kind of de-animated back into, do the Europeans take the opposite view and say, right, it happened once, it can happen again. We need to pull away from the United States, and we do need to get our stuff together and kind of create this cohesive continental security framework. The problem is I don't think they can, even if they wanted to, because they're at odds with each other. You know, Europe whole and free is one thing, but Europe united in common cause, that's a very different order. Look at Germany versus France right now.
I feel pained and sad that that Europe is not as united as it can be. There's a lot of history that explains it, and I understand it.
Yeah.
I understand why the Germans can't be on the front foot of national or kind of continent national security, if you like. They can't be on the front foot of that, and therefore they've got to step behind France, but France has got its own slightly weird nationalistic agenda. And we were wonderful, Britain, as being a kind of honest go-between, or at least a kind of wry and half amused go-between, knowing our history with the Second World War, that we can, we've got a good record on this, and we've blotted our copybook and we fucked up. But this is a subject of another podcast in the not too distant future. But for now, I'm drinking Australian wine. I'm toasting the United States return to sanity. You've been listening to The Last Call. Do plug in again.